Boris Johnson is the politician I've come to despise the most.
But eventually we will see a party emerge that speaks to the Conservative majority in the country, that is capable of delivering what people voted for in the referendum. Boy, is it needed.
Out of all the prime ministers and governments in my lifetime, I'm 50, what am I now? 56. Boris Johnson is the politician I've come to despise the most. Not because I disagree with anything he said, but because he's the only politician who sold me a lie. I feel a fool. I feel let down. I feel like an idiot that I bought into his rhetoric in 2019. He told me he was a fun, lovable version of Winston Churchill. He told me he loved this country. He told me he was going to deliver Brexit. He was going to make us great again, put the great back into Great Britain. And he got into power. And for the life of me, I can't name a thing he did apart from everything that was wrong. He seemed to do what his wife told him. He seemed not to want any make decisions. He seemed to be embarrassed that he fought for Brexit, became prime minister, and now went, oh crap, I'm sorry I got involved in any of this.
I think there's an explanation for this, and I'm afraid this is quite difficult to stomach. But with the perspective of time and hindsight, I think one can only really understand the actions of Boris Johnson and Michael Gove by really, they came out before the referendum to lead Vote Leave. Number one, the Vote Leave machine had been created long before either Boris or Gove had emerged to lead it. People like Matthew Elliott and Dan Hannan and Dominic Cummings had worked very, very hard to create this disciplined, focused machine, Vote Leave. When Boris and Gove came out to lead it, my hunch, I'm afraid to say, is that they were expecting Vote Leave to lose. And what they were really doing by coming out to support Vote Leave was to position themselves for future advancement in a Cameroon government. Having led the unsuccessful Leave campaign, I think their calculation was they would be indispensable for David Cameron, who could then say, right, we need unity. I'm going to bring in some of these token leavers. And I think that was really their game plan. That explains why the morning after winning, they were clueless as to what to say. It explains why they had no game plan for running the country and allowed the cataclysmic Theresa May in charge. It explains why, when eventually they did hold high office post-Brexit, they ended up implementing a policy agenda that owed nothing to the origins of Euroscepticism or Vote Leave. I think they were opportunistic, and fair dues to them. Their opportunism paid off, but ultimately I think they were found out because they were, politicians often say they suffer from imposter syndrome. I think in the case of Boris or Michael Gove, if they do suffer from imposter syndrome, it's probably fairly accurate and well earned. They ended up in positions of great authority and not knowing what to do with it. But enough of them. They're a rather sad and sorry episode in British politics. What remains true after the career of these people is long gone is that Britain is free to make its own laws. Britain is free to take a new path. Britain is free to learn the lessons of how not to do it, how not to do it on immigration, how not to do it on taxation and regulation, all these other things. Britain doesn't need to seek the permission of bureaucrats in Brussels and other countries to make these decisions. And critically, Britain can no longer blame foreigners for homegrown mistakes. And I hope this acts as a catalyst. Eventually, we will see a centre-right force emerge in Britain. It may be the Conservative Party, it may be the Reform Party, it may be another. But eventually, we will see a party emerge that speaks to the Conservative majority in the country, that is capable of delivering what people voted for in the referendum. Boy, is it needed. But I'm optimistic. We're in a ditch at the moment, but when you're in a ditch, the only way is out.
No, I completely agree. I'm very optimistic. Things have been changing this last few years, and I can feel the change in the air. I can feel the British people have had enough, and they want a change.
the single most important thing that's happened is the ability of people like you and me on shows like this to talk about these ideas. For generations, the media was controlled by the kind of people that edited the Today program. Remember what that was? Newsnight, remember what that was? Thanks to Elon Musk taking over Twitter, which has had a knock-on effect on YouTube and Facebook and all the other social media platforms, it is now possible for you and me and people like us to talk about and set our own agenda, free from people whose obsession is the soap opera of Westminster. This means not only can we talk about what's gone wrong with government, why the one-party system we seem to have at the moment is such a disaster, we can begin to really interrogate things like multiculturalism. Is that something that is credible and viable? We can begin to discuss things like immigration. At what point have we, the British people, been asked whether or not we want millions of people from outside the West to settle in our country? We can discuss these things. We can talk about the criminal justice system. We can assess whether or not judges who hold enormous authority are competent in exercising that. We can begin to discuss the criminal justice system. Is it right that people who commit very serious offences are given very small, lenient sentences? What's really significant in Britain and what is really galvanizing the Conservative movement is not any institution, new or old, in Westminster. It's not any party, new or old, in Westminster. It's not Kemi Badenoch or Nigel Farage. It is this kind of discussion we're having. That is what is going to drive Conservative change in Britain. And that is what makes me optimistic.